Hi, it's Jo and Steve from Freshagenda, and this week we thought we'd take a look at some of the stranger things that are going on in dairy.
Things that make you go Things that make you go
And no, we don't mean the Netflix show. We're actually talking about what's going on in the Australian dairy industry. And for those of our overseas fans, you may not be aware of who Barnaby Joyce is.
You're a nut. You're crazy in the coconut. What does that mean? That boy needs therapy.
He's the ex-Ag Minister for Australia. He's currently the Drought Envoy, whatever that means. And in that role, he's kicked up a bit of a stink this week about having a royal commission into the dairy industry in Australia. And these are just some of the quotes from the news coverage, Steve, from Barnaby. Profiteering from drought, that's the supermarkets. They're putting the milk at the back of the store and making people walk through the store.
Which I thought was a logistics and refrigeration type of issue for a supermarket.
Well, if we had a royal commission, we would know that. And apparently dairy farmers are paying for the advertising because the milk's in the back of the store. And we know what they're up to, but we still need a royal commission. Fair go, this is outrageous, we've got to stop it. So what is actually going on with dairy farmers? We're certainly seeing dairy farmers in Australia doing it tough, Steve.
Yeah, with just some headline issues that every farmer is feeling. They're probably not all feeling directly the slide in milk fatties, but the commodity value of milk in this market has sunk quite a bit.
As it has around the world.
As it has around the world, and I guess the impacts have yet to be seen flow through to milk prices. So that might be coming. It just depends whether companies can resist that or not. And I guess the other things, there were some very stark increases in cost on farm, which is putting a great squeeze on production, and it's been fairly dry.
That's right. Some of the other figures, just looking at it at the moment, culling rates are up 15% in sales volume and prices are down about 15%. So it's all lining up to be a very tough period for dairy farmers. So what are some of the issues that we're seeing associated with drought? And again, Barnaby Joyce is the drought envoy. We've got a lot of coverage about the drought and dairy farmers who have called for a drought levy, which has then been very controversial itself. Is there really a need for a royal commission, Steve? What do we need to do in terms of these issues?
I think there's been so many reviews and commissions in recent years of the dairy industry. As you said earlier in our newsletter, what else is there to know? Because it's all been crawled over. There's more to come out of it. There's various things underway, but so going back to 2010, we've had various Senate inquiries, which are strange affairs. ACCC inquiry. Out of the ACCC inquiry, there was a recommendation to implement a code, and the New South Wales government's just announced another inquiry into that state. So there's an ongoing trawl over dairy. None of it's focusing on the issues that are really causing the grief at the moment,
and the fragility of the farm sector. Yeah.
And looking at supermarket relationships and stuff like that isn't going to change those big factors that are causing the grief right now.
No.
I mean, it's a market and it's a cost-driven issue.
That's right. And certainly for dairy farmers, you do wonder if they're getting a little bit of inquiry fatigue. As we said, the consultation around the mandatory code, which was the ACCC's key recommendation from their inquiry, has had a fairly poor turnout. Obviously, farmers have got a lot on their plate and they might just be inquiried out.
Yeah, look, and so there is a lot of noise around this issue.
Yeah,
a lot of noise coming out from the industry, from various stakeholder groups. The risk here is that the government's sitting there hearing all this noise and looking at essentially a piece of regulation around how contracts are structured, as a mandatory code will contain. For the industry, it's a fairly dangerous time.
Yeah,
because if that isn't a coordinated wish list that's got a balance of views between what the market can work with and what farmers need for greater certainty and investment security, you'll end up with something that will be devised in Canberra which won't be relevant to the workings of an industry like this.
Yeah.
So it is a dangerous time, and industry needs to get its act together, or else it will mess this up and they'll be left with something that doesn't work.
Yeah, that's right. So on to other strange issues in dairy, Stephen. We saw a major revision out of Eurostat this week, and you know, for analysts like us that are watching Europe fairly carefully and monitoring product mix and things like this is a fairly massive revision to 2017 data.
Yeah, Eurostat's not known for the precision of data or the the fact that a lot of people query what's actually in there. So it is very loose. But a big chunk like that of cheese that is found, production's found, had a big impact on your comparables change greatly, and you know what's the real impact. So we're in the midst of doing a monthly global update. We're going to compensate for this and work out just how to make sense of what's going on. We have done so that's what we're coming out in the next few days. We'll talk about it next week.
Yes.
But yeah, those little frights don't help. Create certainty for how milk's being used and what the next few months might hold.
That's right.
In terms of product mix,
it's
which
very
is
critical.
all important.
Yeah. And the next thing was no copyright on cheese taste. This was an interesting little item that's come out in the last couple of weeks. We had two Dutch cheesemakers, and I love that little sub-headline there. Lavola and Smild. I'm probably not going to say that properly. You've got the Dutch background. But one is the maker of Witch's cheese, and one is... And they're suing the maker of Wise Women's cheese because they think tastes the same. But the European Court of Justice says no, taste can't be copyrighted because it's too subjective in the eye of the beholder. So it's a little bit of fun, but it's got a wider and more serious side to it, hasn't it?
Because this was put in the guise of a geographical indicator. So there's sought to be a protection for the way that cheese tastes, and the European Court of Justice kicked that out. So it has some good implications.
Wider implications.
Yeah. So I mean, the Commission's been on about the dangers of trying to stretch the envelope on GIs, and so this reinforces that there's a justice system obviously there that deals with it. So an interesting development.
Yeah, for sure. And then this next little item has absolutely no serious side to it at all, but was just a really good headline from the BBC. No sale for Australia's enormous Knickers. So this is a story about a Holstein steer that is so large that processors couldn't actually accept it for slaughter. So he lives on, Knickers. Apparently he used to have a mate who was called Bra, so hence the name.
So glad you brought that to us, Jo.
A bit of fun.
Things that make you go, It's the things that make you go,
Your chart of the week.
Chart of the week.
What a relief.
I know, right? So this week we reported on New Zealand's whole milk powder exports to China and Hong Kong, and the export stats were a little bit mixed for October, but there was some good news in terms of China looking like it's back in the market.
Yeah, reinforced by what activity has been seen on GDT recently. So the activity supports the notion that Chinese are more active on the buy side, and that may be, and also in the background, I guess, to say that we hear anecdotes about production being harder, and that more milk's going into fresh. Obviously, more milk is going into fresh product in China, so it does help the logic that with lower whole milk powder prices, demand should kick up a bit.
Yeah, which is some good news.
Fairly important for New Zealand, who's crunching milk out at a fairly fast rate right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, hopefully.
Right, that's all from us. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week.
Things that make you go,
Things that make you go,